Welcome to the contact yard at the Oakland Zoo. Today we're here to show you some of the changes we have made to our contact yard over the past few years. As zookeepers, we're always working towards improving our animals' welfare. You can probably relate to the feeling that the status quo is never good enough, and so we want to talk about some of our dreams for the future of contact yards. We're going to give you some examples of times when we came up against this idea of that can't be done and how we worked around our limitations to achieve things we didn't think were possible. Often the biggest challenges we run into are time, staffing, and budget. So all of the solutions we are going to talk about today work within those constraints.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyle Hetzel and I'm the supervising keeper over the goats and sheep in the contact yard at the Oakland Zoo. In late 2023, the team got together to problem solve a few of the challenges that we were facing. Around this time of year is usually when we do our welfare assessments for all the animals under our care. The team was recognizing a need to shift from how we had been working with our ambassadors and wanted to move in a new direction. We were seeing some lower welfare scores for some individuals as well as for the herd as a group. We understood that this was not going to be a one solution fix, but rather a systemic shift that we needed to make as a team. The first thing we looked at was the space. The contact yard at the time was a beautiful, lush, flat field of grass with steep rock structures for climbing. We first wanted to increase the amount of vertical space for the goats to climb and make it more accessible for younger and older animals. Initially, we were told you can't do that because it was going to cost around $5,000 for just the frame and cement posts. So we found a more achievable goal and found a way to utilize cost-effective slow-feeding hay buckets that you can buy at your local hardware stores to hang around the yard. This allowed us to start to use various spaces in the yard that we hadn't before. This phase got the animals moving more and utilizing space that the slow feeders made less of a mess to clean up, which gave the keepers more flexibility where they hung them. From that point, we were able to start to make the enrichment a little bit more challenging and put it into different parts of the yard that we hadn't before. So here you can see one of our sheep, Tony, being able to enjoy a slow feeder on a really steep hillside, again eliciting a lot of that natural goat and sheep-like behavior of being able to forage and graze along all sorts of terrains. The next phase of our plan was to brainstorm how we could add vertical climbing structures on a $0 budget. I started to reach out to people on Facebook Marketplace who were selling spools. I explained that I worked for the zoo and what the spools would be used for. In some cases, some people would try to cut me a huge discount, but I explained that I really don't have any money to be working with. And then there were others who were simply excited to be able to support the zoo and gave them away for free as well as delivered them right to us. This was huge in reducing costs because it allowed us to not only expand the yard but also into our various holding spaces. The climbing structures are such a focal point for all of our guests as well as our interpreters to be able to have great talking points when they see the goats being able to jump and climb all across these. The spools do also give us the ability to move and adjust the climbing structures to different locations and height, so it is a type of enrichment that we can keep on moving around and have all throughout the year in very different places. If you're feeling like a climbing structure may not be an option for you in your facility, but you still want to get your goats out moving and exploring more, you can expand your learner's world by taking them out for a walk. In this video, I absolutely love it because you can see that we have 5 of our goats out for a walk around the children's zoo with keepers of various skill level and years of experience, but everybody enjoys it. The guests love to be able to see it. The goats are always super excited to go out for a walk, and it's their time. It's not a time for them to be able to interact with guests more, but it's a time for our guests to be able to see the goats getting out and about throughout the zoo. One of the last changes we made in regards to the space of the contact yard was being able to close off the barn as a retreat space for the herd and not allow any public access. Previously, 2 stalls would be open. One was a retreat space that was only for the goats, and the other allowed for the public to come in if goats were retreating or laying inside. Our finding from this change showed a decrease in aggression towards conspecifics and a decrease in the ambassadors escaping the yard trying to get access to a retreat space. We also did find the herd relaxing more together as a group instead of just having the dominant goats and sheep being able to have access to the barn. Lastly, this change allowed us to be more thoughtful and methodical in our placement of our food. We also did not want to coerce the learners into coming out to get access to something that they really wanted to in order to do something that they may not have wanted to. So we didn't want them to only be able to get access to food and allow the public to pet them, but instead put the food where the public could still see them enjoying the food, but not put the public or the animals in any danger by putting them in a point where the animals are being coerced to go into a point and possibly get pet by the public when that's not what they're after. What they're after is their food or their enrichment.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Brown and I'm a zookeeper in the Children's Zoo. I'm a huge fan of sheep and goats, and I'm excited to share what they know. All of our herd members in the Children's Zoo have the skills to be vaccinated voluntarily. We were once told that it would be impossible to train every goat and sheep in our herd to participate in their own medical care. Well, we made them a believer, and I look forward to making you one too. Here's how we did it. Using a constructional, non-linear approach, we were able to gain the trust of our herd members, utilizing their many skills and to ask for assent. Salt, our beautiful baby girl here, is utilizing her 4-foot station to engage in the first layer of assent. She then offers a lean-in behavior, giving assent to be touched by Keeper Kyle. Salt understands the contingencies that she may be touched with any object. You can see our blue medical kit in the background here. It holds random items that we find across the zoo and also from the vet hospital that help to keep things as novel as possible for our herd members. Keeper Kyle then approaches with the vaccine, and Salt receives her injection. Now, we chose this video to share with you all because Salt receives 2 vaccines in this training session. This shows that Salt has a greater understanding of the contingencies here in this session. Not only does she allow for 1 poke, but 2. In the background, you can see that there are several other stations that she could jump to and still be reinforced for. There are also other trainers that she works with present behind me as well. However, Salt chooses to stay with me, and she chooses to do the harder thing. Here she is leaning into Keeper Kyle after he prepped the site with the chlorhexidine scrub. He's tenting the skin, inputted the needle, and she's staying and receiving that. Something that's very powerful here is that she decides to do another lean in when I ask for that skill here, showing that it doesn't always have to end on an invasive, painful note when it comes to an injection behavior. Here's the amazing Salt the goat again with one of our volunteers, Chris. In this video, Salt is receiving a liquid topical medication down her back by Keeper Kyle. You can see that Salt is in a different location than the first video. She's on a different 4-foot station and with a brand new trainer, yet she is still successful. The constructional approach means we are teaching Salt skills that we can combine to get behaviors. So the same way she can combine a 4-foot station, lean in, novel object, we can combine all those pieces again to get her topical treatment done. And since you are all probably huge Salt fans by now, here is one more example of her utilizing her skills to achieve a voluntary medical behavior. This is an x-ray of Salt that was performed in the barn. We needed to get an emergency x-ray when we noticed that her scur was growing toward her skull and that she was in need of a horn trim. If you look closely, you can see that she has a metal rod in her mouth that was covered in peanut butter that we used as her reinforcer to keep her still. So another example of something that can't be done is sheep shearing based on industry standards. A lot of people think that sheep shearing can only be performed under restraint. In the background, you can hear Keeper Kyle calling into hospital, letting them know we're going into an invasive medical procedure, taking the wool off of our sheep under restraint. There's a lot of arteries, veins, and vital organs that are involved in this process and can be ruptured. And the sheepskin, while it's durable, it can be quite graphic whenever it's cut. So we want to make sure that we're being as safe as possible, hiring a professional, having them come in and do this. However, there's a lot of negative effects that come with it. Not only is it the distress that it puts on the animal, whether they're fighting for their life or they freeze in distress, but they also have to be separated from their herd mates for a range of time, anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, depending on the animal. They have to be fasted from food and water so their rumen isn't too full because they can suffocate under the weight of that. It also does cause quite a regression in our behavior, and we take a very high toll whenever it comes to the relationships that we have with our sheep. It definitely comes with scheduling issues, a higher cost, and if we decide to do it ourselves, we would need to be certified and also have the high cost machinery and maintenance as well. Now, this is one of my favorite videos. Here's us 6 months later, voluntary shearing Tony in the yard. This is Keeper Brenda and one of her best friends, Tony. Here you can see he's standing peacefully in the front of the petting yard, just being shorn by Brenda here. How did we get here? A lot of people want to know the recipe, but we really like to go with more of an individualistic approach. We call it the study of one, where every learner is very unique and uses their own pathway to get there. We call that constructional, and we look forward to showing you how that is developed more as we go along in the presentation. All right, so here we can see the benefits of our 4-foot station with our sheep block. 3 trainers utilizing 3 different stations. You can see that each learner has a different preference. Notice how I labeled it a 4-foot station. However, the sheep on the right, Mr. Matt, has decided that he wants to do a 2-foot station. And then the sheep on the left, Tony, is actually borrowing part of Claire's station. And that's completely fine. Whenever it comes to the animal and the individual, it just whatever steps they need to be successful is what we provide for them. So there are several options around them to be reinforced. They can also be reinforced on any station that they so choose. All right, so here is Claire the sheep. Claire is our female Shetland sheep. And you'll see here that Claire is showing off her lean-in skill. If you don't look closely though, you just might miss it because Claire's lean-in is very unique. It's minimal and small, especially compared to some of the other members of our herd. This is a really good example of just meeting our animals where they are. Every animal is unique and special, and that includes Miss Claire here, as her lean-in is micro small. 1 small step to the side, and that's her meeting criteria. Okay, here is Matt the sheep, and he's showing off his lean-in, but my favorite part of this video isn't his cheek lean-in or his adorableness. It's the fact that he decides to say no thank you here. So Matt can choose to say no thank you and still be reinforced. He does decide to come back to the station, which is great, showing you that he still wants to train, but perhaps he just didn't want to show off that lean-in skill in that moment, and that's okay. All right, so here we have Tony the sheep participating in a training session with novel objects. Jess is acting as a vet tech there on the ground, utilizing our fun blue kit filled with random things. Tony stands on his 4-foot station. He leans into multiple objects and will experience a variety of sensation on different parts of his body. One of the objects he's experiencing right now is the plastic chain that we use for enrichment. So for him, he's experiencing something odd and strange, a weird sensation going down his back. Now this is very important because the clippers that I would use to shear him would be vibrating and they do make a noise. So this is just one approximation in leading up to the shearing process. Tony and I actually don't get the opportunity to work together so often, so you'll notice that I had my hand loaded with food there to help him focus and to reinforce him faster. Once again, just an approximation in him learning to do a lean-in skill with a brand new trainer. Look at him go, so impressive. Alright, so the outcome of utilizing a nonlinear constructional approach allowed us to successfully shear our sheep voluntarily. With the novelty of objects paired with the skills and trust with our sheep, we were able to successfully volunteer all 3 of our sheep multiple times. Here you can see Keeper Jess pushing the shears down his body. Of course he feels a vibration and notices a little bit of a response. You can see that in the way he moves his leg. However, he decides to stay and continuously being reinforced. And you'll see his friend Matt there being a little bit jealous and coming over and wanting to participate as well, which helps us feel really encouraged. All right, so here is a group shot of our goat training team working with some newer team members. You can see many skills represented here. We're using stations, targets, lean-ins, you name it. We strive to have our trainers be as novel as our objects during training sessions, because incorporating volunteers and interns and keepers from other sections is not only reinforcing to them, but really helpful in the training process. This is a great way to complete social enrichment goals, cooperative feeding and training opportunities, and both human and animals are being able to participate and learn.
Hi, I'm Oliver Northwood, a keeper aide down in the contact yard. Another common way we heard that can't be done was in reference to guests and the idea that guests won't enjoy our contact yard if they can't touch the animals. That butts up against our desire to give our animals the choice to be touched or not be touched. So I'm going to talk about how we gave our animals that choice and how we still made the petting yard a great experience for guests, even if they don't get to touch an animal. Over the past few years, the contact yard at the Oakland Zoo has evolved to have more and more retreat space. Since we now have the majority of our yard space for just goats and sheep, anywhere beyond that chain barrier is a place where they know they will not be touched. The concrete area that we see in the middle is a space where guests can come in, and if a goat or sheep is there, they can touch them. We put up these chain barriers with eye bolts, and they can be rearranged easily using carabiners. In addition to the retreat space, we knew some animals didn't want to be pet in any space they went into. This is Hazel the goat wearing a do not pet dog collar. We keep these on hand for animals who may not want to be pet for medical reasons or their personality, or they just need a day off. This collar lets Hazel walk around any space in her exhibit without any worry of being touched. This system of having easy access to retreat space has meant that when goats and sheep are in the public area, it is because they want to be pet. Goats are very smart. They figured out this system very quickly. Guests love this. They love learning that the goats and sheep who are in the petting area actually want to be pet. It gives them a deeper connection with the animals because they understand that the goat is choosing this interaction as much as they are. But what if all the goats want to be inside? Sometimes that is the case, either because of the number of people who've already pet them that day, or the time of day, or just preference. We still want to make their visit to the contact yard a great experience for guests, where they feel they have a chance to connect with our animals. One way we did this was by creating ID sheets. These are made just in Google Docs, and we printed them and laminated them so kids can carry them around. They end up getting the feeling of being on a scavenger hunt looking for goats. It gives people a way to connect with the animals by learning their names. Here is another version of that same ID sheet using some drawings I made of the goats. This teaches kids about looking closely at animals as they try to determine who is who. So they have to look at their size, color, markings, and whether each animal has horns. Here is a more in-depth version of those ID sheets, which we made using some grommets and a ring clip. This booklet has not only photos, but also ages, birthdays, breeds, the origin story of the goat, and fun anecdotes from the keepers. Kids often want to touch a goat on their horns, so we kept a horn from a goat who passed away to let them touch it without causing discomfort for our living goats. With our biofacts, we always have a one-page sheet of information for docents or volunteers to learn about how to interpret using each item. We also held a docent training workshop specifically for educating guests in the contact yard. We covered topics like using our biofacts and activities, and also how to talk to guests about empathy for when the goats and sheep don't want to be pet. The changes we've made to our messaging go a long way in not only making our guests happier and more connected with our animals, but also leaving our docents more confident in how to advocate for the animals that they are educating with. My final point is about a very common request we get, which is to touch the sheep. Sheep are naturally quite shy, so ours spend their time almost exclusively in areas where the public can't touch them. A great solve for this has been to use the same wool we sheared earlier in this presentation to give kids something to feel and play with and ask questions about, while we talk about giving the sheep space to make choices that make them feel good.
We want to end our presentation with George participating in a voluntary blood draw to show you how much making these changes can affect the animals in our care. Oliver, Brittany, myself, and the rest of the String 7 team hope that you walk away with a better understanding of what domestic animals are capable of in a zoo setting. A big thank you to ABMA for giving us this platform during Behavior Month to share the work the team has been working so hard on. If you have questions or want to learn more about the constructional approach and how it can help your team, please reach out. We're happy to share any resources and support you when you get told that you can't do that. Thank you so much.